Ethan had mastered the art of being present without being seen. He knew exactly how to slip into a classroom 2 minutes before the bell, how to choose the desk that no one else wanted, how to keep his head tilted just enough toward a book so teachers thought he was focused and classmates assumed he preferred to be alone. It wasn't that anyone had decided to ignore him, it was worse than that. They simply hadn't noticed him enough to decide anything at all. In the mornings, the bus smelled like damp coats and cheap deodorant. Laughter bounced off the windows while Ethan stared at his reflection, watching his own mouth press into a thin line. He sometimes practiced expressions in the glass, slightly amused, mildly confident, relaxed. None of them felt like his. At school, the hallways moved like rivers. Groups formed and shifted and reformed with an ease that seemed almost magical. Friends greeted each other with half-shouted names and inside jokes. Ethan walked through it all like a ghost drifting through walls. He told himself it didn't matter. At lunch, he took out his sandwich and unwrapped it slowly, stretching the process so he wouldn't have to finish it quickly. He read the same page of his book 3 times. Sometimes he pretended to type on his phone, though there was rarely anyone to text. He wasn't bullied. No one shoved him into lockers or laughed when he walked by. That might have been easier, in a strange way. At least then, he would have been acknowledged. Instead, he existed in the blank spaces between other people's conversations. At home, things were quiet too. His mom worked late shifts and came home tired. She loved him. He knew that. She asked about school and reminded him to do his homework and kissed the top of his head when she thought he was asleep. But she didn't see the way his shoulders slumped when he walked through the door each afternoon. Ethan didn't know how to explain something that wasn't dramatic. "I'm lonely" felt too heavy for what he was experiencing. Lonely sounded like sitting in a dark room crying. He wasn't crying, he was just untethered. One evening, rain tapped softly against his bedroom window. The sky outside had folded into a dull gray, and the streetlights flickered on early. Ethan sat cross-legged on his bed, staring at nothing in particular. He had tried to join a conversation earlier that day. 3 boys had been talking about football. Ethan liked football. He'd opened his mouth to mention a match he'd watched, but his voice had come out too quiet. One of them had glanced at him briefly, then turned away mid-sentence. Ethan hadn't tried again. Now, in the quiet of his room, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I wish someone understood me," he murmured. He didn't mean to say it out loud. The words simply slipped past his lips. "I do." The voice was soft, calm, certain. Ethan froze. His first thought was that his mom had come home early, but the voice had been closer than the door. It had been inside the room. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head. A boy sat at the edge of his bed. Ethan's brain refused to process what he was seeing at first. The boy looked about his age. He wore a faded hoodie and jeans. His hair fell messily over his forehead. His face was familiar. Not identical, but close. Close enough that Ethan's heart began to pound. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. The boy tilted his head, studying him with curious eyes. They were brighter than Ethan's, more certain. "My name's Leo," he said. Ethan swallowed. "How did you get in here?" "You asked me to come." "No, I didn't." Leo smiled faintly. "You didn't use those exact words." Ethan stood up abruptly, backing toward the wall. "This isn't real." Leo shrugged. "If that helps." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. He counted to 5. He opened them again. Leo was still there. He didn't look threatening. If anything, he looked patient. "You're not scared," Leo observed. "I should be. Probably. But I'm not." Leo's smile widened. "That's because you know me." "I don't." "You do." The room felt oddly still. Even the rain seemed to quiet. Ethan sat back down slowly. "Explain." Leo leaned back on his hands. "You're tired of talking to yourself in your head. So now, you don't have to." The words landed gently but heavily. Ethan had always had an internal voice. A running commentary. A critic. A worrier. Sometimes a comforter. But this felt different. This voice had shape and posture and eyes. "You're imaginary," Ethan said. "If that makes you feel better. Imaginary people don't sit on beds." "Maybe yours does." Ethan studied him carefully. Leo's features were sharper, more defined. Where Ethan hesitated, Leo seemed steady. Where Ethan slouched, Leo sat upright. "Why now?" Ethan asked. Leo's gaze softened. "Because you needed someone to answer." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It felt almost relieving. Ethan let out a shaky breath. "So what? You're my friend. If you want." Ethan looked away. "I don't have any." Leo didn't flinch. "I know." There was no pity in his voice, just fact. And that made something in Ethan's chest loosen. They talked for hours that night. About school. About the way Ethan's mind replayed conversations long after they ended. About how he sometimes imagined himself saying bold, confident things, but never actually did. Leo listened without interrupting. When Ethan trailed off, embarrassed, Leo filled the silence with gentle questions. When Ethan admitted he felt invisible, Leo shook his head. "You're not invisible," he said. "You just act like you want to be." Ethan frowned. "I don't. You keep your head down. You avoid eye contact. You speak softly. You expect people not to notice you." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He did do those things. "I'm protecting myself," Ethan said quietly. "From what?" "From getting it wrong." Leo nodded slowly. "And how's that working out?" Ethan huffed a quiet laugh. "Not great." Leo grinned. "Good. Then we can change it." The word we felt strange and comforting at the same time. The next morning, Leo sat on the edge of Ethan's desk while Ethan got ready for school. "You're coming with me?" Ethan asked. "Obviously. What if someone sees you?" "They won't." "You're sure?" Leo raised an eyebrow. "You think if anyone could see me, I'd still be here?" Ethan hesitated. They walked to school together, though only one pair of footsteps made a sound. In the hallway, Ethan felt the usual wave of uncertainty. He braced himself for the day. "You look like you're about to walk into battle," Leo observed. "School kind of is." Leo leaned closer. "Then stand like it's yours." Ethan straightened slightly. In class, when the teacher asked a question about the reading assignment, Ethan knew the answer. He always knew the answers. He just rarely volunteered them. His heart began its familiar rapid beat. "Raise your hand," Leo whispered. Ethan's fingers twitched. "Do it." "What if I get it wrong?" "You won't." "But what if I do?" "Then you'll survive." Ethan lifted his hand. It felt like lifting something much heavier. The teacher called on him. His voice wavered at first, then steadied. When he finished, the teacher nodded approvingly. "Exactly right." No one gasped. No one mocked him. The world did not collapse. Leo smiled. "See," he said. It became a pattern. Small nudges, small risks. When Ethan nearly avoided making eye contact with the classmate who had glanced his way, Leo said, "Up." "So he did." The classmate gave a brief nod. It wasn't life-changing, but it was something. At lunch, when Ethan considered sitting alone as usual, Leo pointed toward an open space at a table. "You like drawing," Leo said. "That girl over there does too." "How do you know?" "I listen when you don't." Ethan's stomach twisted. Walking up to a group felt like stepping onto a stage without rehearsal. "Go," Leo urged gently. Ethan approached. Is this seat taken?" he asked. The girl looked up. She had paint smudges on her fingers. "No, go ahead." He sat. The conversation didn't magically include him at first. He listened. He waited. Leo leaned close. "Say something about the sketchbook." Ethan cleared his throat. "That's a cool drawing." The girl smiled. "Thanks." It was a simple exchange, but it felt like cracking a door open. Over the next few weeks, the cracks widened. Ethan began to laugh more freely. He discovered that people responded when he did. They weren't rejecting him. They simply hadn't known he wanted to be part of things. Leo remained by his side, sometimes quiet, sometimes guiding. "You assume the worst," Leo told him one afternoon after Ethan misinterpreted a whispered conversation as being about him. "I can't help it." "You can." "How?" "Ask yourself if there's actual evidence." Ethan paused. There wasn't. His mind had been filling in blanks with fear. Leo didn't solve everything. Ethan still stumbled over words. He still felt awkward sometimes, but the difference was that he didn't retreat as quickly. And with each small step forward, Leo seemed to change. At first, Ethan thought it was the lighting, or exhaustion. But one evening, while they sat on the floor playing a video game, Ethan noticed that he could almost see the carpet through Leo's arm. He blinked. Leo's edges looked softer. "Are you fading?" Ethan asked quietly. Leo paused the game. "A little." Ethan's chest tightened. "Why?" Leo met his gaze. "What do you think?" Ethan didn't want to answer. The next day at school, the girl from lunch, her name was Awife, waved him over before he even reached the table. "Ethan, come sit with us." The word "us" made warmth spread through him. He glanced around instinctively for Leo. Leo stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "Go," Leo said. Ethan walked over. The conversation flowed easier now. He told a joke. People laughed. Not out of politeness, out of genuine amusement. He felt lighter, but every time he turned to share the moment with Leo stepped forward, but he looked almost translucent now. "You're disappearing," Ethan whispered. Leo gave a small nod. "No," Ethan said quickly, "not yet. I still need you." Leo's smile was sad but proud. "Do you?" "Yes." "Why?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. He searched for an answer. "You help me," he said finally. "I remind you," Leo corrected gently. "Of what?" "Of what you already are." Ethan's eyes burned. "You were never invisible," Leo said. "You were hiding, just stood where you couldn't see." "I'm scared," Ethan admitted. "I know. What if I go back to how I was?" "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you've seen what happens when you try." Ethan's thoughts raced. The hand raising, the lunch table, the goal, the laughter. Those moments hadn't belonged to Leo. They'd belonged to him. Leo stepped closer. Ethan could almost see the wall through him now. "You built me out of your need," Leo said softly, "but you don't need me the same way anymore." Ethan's voice cracked. "Will I ever see you again?" Leo placed a hand over Ethan's chest. The touch felt warm, steady. "I'm not leaving," he said. "I'm just changing places." Ethan felt something settle inside him. Not a voice, not a presence, just a quiet certainty. "Thank you," he whispered. Leo's smile widened one last time. Then he faded, like mist dissolving in sunlight. The room was empty, but it didn't feel hollow. The next morning, Ethan woke with a strange mixture of loss and calm. He half expected to see Leo leaning against the doorframe. He wasn't. At school, the hallway still buzzed with noise. Groups still formed and shifted. But something had shifted inside Ethan too. When Awife waved him over, he didn't hesitate. When the teacher asked a question, he considered answering, not because someone nudged him, but because he wanted to. When he caught his reflection in the bus window on the way home, he didn't practice expressions. He just looked. He saw nervousness, yes, uncertainty sometimes. But he also saw someone who had stepped forward instead of shrinking back. Weeks passed. There were still awkward days. Still moments when he overthought things. Still times when he wanted to retreat into silence. But now, when doubt crept in, he didn't imagine a separate voice. He asked himself the questions Leo used to ask. Is there evidence for that fear? What's the worst that could happen? Will you survive it? The answers steadied him. One afternoon Awife asked, "You seem different lately, more confident." Ethan felt a flicker of surprise. "Do I?" "Yeah," she said. "It's cool." He smiled. If she only knew. That evening, as rain tapped against his window again, Ethan sat on his bed. "I'm okay," he murmured softly, not to summon anyone, but to acknowledge it. The room remained quiet. And that was all right. Because the space beside him no longer felt like it was waiting to be filled. It felt like it belonged to him. Ethan had once wished for someone who understood him. In the end, he discovered that someone had been there all along, waiting for him to look up, to speak, to step forward. He was never invisible. He was just learning how to be seen. And now, when he walked through the hallways at school, he didn't feel like a ghost drifting between other people's lives. He felt like a person taking up space. And that made all the difference. The end.
I hope you learned one thing in this video. You are not alone. It is a thing of the mind. Yes, you see yourself. You believe in yourself. when you have self-confidence. You don't need validation from anyone. You are what you think you are. You can achieve what you aim to achieve. So believe in yourself and be there. Go out there and conquer the world. See you in my next video. Bye.